Los jaguares son tremendos.
Okay. Let me start by asking for an early pardon, because I'm about to insult the intelligence of you folks for a while. But later I'll make it right, I promise. Now, what is this? If you said a jaguar,
Wrong. Wrong.
wrong. Not wrong because you mistook this for a leopard. You know, we do that sometimes, but leopards are longer, slimmer than jaguars. Jaguars are shorter, more compact, built more like armored vehicles, like a tank. But if you said this is a jaguar, you were wrong. Why? Well, because this is a jaguar. Why is this a jaguar and this one isn't? Well, it's because it isn't as big. It doesn't create as much waste. It doesn't consume as much. And is not as potentially dangerous as this one. Right, pardon for the insult to one's intelligence. But the reasoning of the supposed anti-capitalist is that of the jaguar scenario I just gave here. An insult to one's intelligence. The reasoning of the artificial anti-capitalist even insults one's intelligence by paying no never mind to how one came from the other one and are not that big yet. They also want you to pay no never mind that the capitalists make sure that the other ones grow up to be big and strong. Never mind those things. This right here, whatever it is, it's what the supposed anti-capitalists are. But they don't want you to realize that. They want the people who they're trying to brainwash to believe that if it's not big, then it's not capitalism. If it's not big, then it's not a capitalist. Okay? And I'll get back to the jaguar thing later because I want to show the mindset of the supposed anti-capitalist people.
From they picked that up from the Hoteps?
Bruh. Hey, it's the New York Post, man. The New York Post kind of based a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, they watch Hoteps. So social justice grifter Shaun King spent 40 grand of the donor money on his prized pooch.
A fucking bull mastiff? Yo, first off,
got the Batman
who finessed this man out of 40K for a bull mastiff?
Oh, you're right about that.
Who finessed him out? That dog better be bulletproof.
Who's the real grifter here, Shaun
Laser
King?
beams out of his eyes. It better be one of them dogs from the John Wick movie or something.
Shaun King, one of the main mouthpieces and propagandists against the rich, against capitalism, so he says. Against capitalists, he says. But a $40,000 dog. A lot of people's yearly salary, that is. But that's typical of the main faces of the artificial anti-capitalist movement to be living high on the hog. Limousine Marxists is what I heard people call them. People who live high while using the average old Joe type of person to seize other people's stuff. And let me give you one of the many examples of what I mean by seize other people's stuff.
Sonam and Kate from Nina's World. We're going live as part of a radical accountability process. We're complicit in the gentrification and anti-blackness on 52nd Street. We put our community at risk with our presence, as well as our workers. And particularly, this was highlighted by an action from us, and we're here to take responsibility for that inaction and for the harm that we caused. With the guidance of the workers and Black and Brown Workers Collective, we're trying to raise funds to buy the business and turn it over to our staff. As the owners of the space, we put our workers in harm's way each day that we're open, and we want to recognize that harm and want to uplift their concerns and needs. We want to be accountable for our complicitness with gentrification and our engagement with anti-Blackness in that gentrification. And in that space, yeah.
The workers of Nina's World deserve so much more. They have worked beyond their means. They have made the space what it is, and our ultimate goal is to return the space to them and give them the shop that they truly deserve to have. And what we're asking you to do right now is to stay tuned for a funder so that we can raise the funds to turn over the space to them and to make sure that they get to have Nina's World in the way that they have envisioned it and rightfully should have it.
We're trying to work with a third owner to buy the business and the property, and we're asking for funds so that we can do that.
Marxism 101 right there. Karl Marx. Turn over your businesses to your employees. And you heard them saying that they're trying to raise money to buy the company. Why? Well, because they're not even the owners. Their mother owns the building, and she refused the demands of these weirdo nutcases. Employees basically trying to strong-arm the mother through her kids. And this has happened in more than a few places.
This might be the biggest and best Get Woke, Go Broke in the history of this channel. And that's saying a lot, because I've covered many, many businesses that thought they were super duper woke, only to find out that that's not really awesome for business. We covered a long time ago that cafe that charged men 30% more for coffee, only to close eventually. We, the Maria Kwai Workers Collective, hereafter MEWC, are composed of the current employees of Doc Marie's. We only speak for ourselves, not the ownership of the bar, Donk Brands LLC. This is the only social media account affiliated with us. We felt misled about the safe being safe and welcoming. Our vision is a queer worker-owned co-op that is run democratically, provides mutual aid, and hosts free opportunities for education to our community. It's a bar! It's a bar! Are you insane? I mean, what? Yes, you are insane. 100% you're insane. There's no question about it. Eventually, the employees demanded the owners relinquish ownership of the bar to hand the business to them. The owners were given a 24-hour deadline to adhere to the ludicrous demands. Yesterday, we presented a list of demands including owner resignation and relinquishing stake to workers, which as of 7 p.m. on 7/4/2022 has not been acknowledged despite being past the agreement. Who are these people? Who are these people?
And it's happened a lot more places than the two I just showed you. The goal is to force everybody out of business and force businesses into the hands of government owning everything. Socialist Marxists. And you know, there's this idea that owners of businesses shouldn't make a lot more money than its employees. An idea that I believe, I don't know, probably came from outer space somewhere. The only way employees should be owners is if they're buying that company's stocks. Then you can partake in ownership, or maybe even buy so much stock you'll end up owning the whole thing that way. And not just because you work there. Now these next clips from the Young Turks. The Young Turks probably the biggest faces of this fake anti-capitalist movement as far as the internet media personalities go. And I'll have the videos I'll sample from in the description box if you want to go and listen to them lie to you longer than the snippets I'm going to pluck out of these videos, right? You go over there and listen to them lie to you for a long time if you want to.
This is super exciting. Based on all of the fan requests that have come in, specifically on a show about banking, our first official panel on banking that's going to happen right now, called the Big Bank Breakdown, is starting right soon. I've got some fantastic guests here with me. We're going to break down the power hierarchy down to what we can do from an individual and local perspective on our money, on our activism, and how we can basically make our money and our power work for us, for the planet, for each other, rather than for the large banks who get globs of it, have a lot of political support, and pay a lot of fines to just go away and do what they're doing again anyway. And your perspective on that. So, Shaun, if you'd like to kind of frame that for us from a power perspective.
From a power perspective, yeah, what you touched upon certainly is this notion that we have, the banks essentially were loosening the interest, the Fed was loosening the interest rate so that we can fuel the stock market rise. In doing a documentary called Century of War, which I interviewed you for, Naomi, and was a lot of fun to work on, but it was very dismal as far as seeing the real impact of what the American economy looks like. We talk about the country being the strongest in the world and the economy being so strong, and then you go to places like Detroit, like Baltimore, even in Los Angeles right here, as we know, there's this complete striation between wealth and poverty. And actually, ironically, most people really are living in debt. It's just a question of those that actually have access to more credit lines, that actually have more assets, as opposed to those that are completely squeezed. As we know, majority of people in this country are completely squeezed with very little to no assets. And so they're just living as debt slaves. And when talking to one young man in Detroit, one of the great things that he quoted from the documentary was saying, look, people like myself, a young black man from Detroit, I don't invest in Wall Street. No one I know invests in Wall Street. Why? We have no relationship with how to deal with these Wall Street companies. We don't really know how to read this. What we know are what we buy. So if we could basically diversify and create more local markets, people like Catherine Austin Fitts advocating for this, how can we basically go back to the idea of more local-based markets so that we can figure out who we're exchanging with? And essentially, if we're going to shop at certain locations and basically we're choosing to interact economically with certain people and companies, and thanks to networking, internet, and all this is getting much easier, and cryptos are making this more facile. Essentially, we need to figure out ways of giving people access to wealth who are not part of this upper class that can afford to invest and follow the trends of the Wall Street Journal and whatnot of where to invest, but the real people who are working, just saying, look, I go down the street, and I like Whole Foods, but right now, investing in Whole Foods, as we know at this point, is not really going to make you a fortune. It was only getting in the beginning. So how can we make markets and things like this growing, burgeoning from the lower class perspective, from the mom and pop perspective? How can we do that? That's one way of framing this discussion.
First of all, can anybody listening explain to me how any bank cannot be capitalistic? Aspiration Bank partnered with every destructive force on the planet, Exxon, Chevron, and whatever else you can think of. You can find Aspiration's affiliations and partnerships by way of a simple Google search. The Young Turks, one of the big pushers of this craze about climate change and how we need to protect the planet and be greener, which is not a bad idea. But the problem is that it's just a theme that they hide behind. Look.
All right, we have a panel coming up, and we have something to show you, I think, a little bit before that. Let's see. Let's see what we have here. This is from Lauren M. She wanted to see more about divestments and socially responsible investments. And we have someone else too, right? All right, there we go. Calvin C says, I want to know more about how where I bank and spend my money connects with my political views.
That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, the invisibility
exactly,
of the banking system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important, So for me, it's a way of fighting the powerlessness that I feel. Well, that's how it works.
Let's get right to this panel. Nomi is heading up this panel, and we are going to check it out right now.
Thank you. This is all very exciting. So to answer some of those questions, we have a fabulous panel right now that we've assembled to talk about ESG investing. So we're going to look at the environmental, social, and governance elements of investing. That includes divesting in places where money does bad things to people and to the planet and to each other, and moving it to places where it does good things for people and the planet and each other. And so let me get to introducing my fabulous guests here, because they represent all of this. First, I have on the far side there, Sarah Neff, who is working at Kilroy Realty. She's going to talk about just the amazing things you're doing as a real estate investment company to move money into real estate investments that actually help the environment. Then we have Serge Dedino, who is actually the executive director of Wild Coast. And to break into that for a second, I love turtles. I really, really love turtles. Recently, I was on a dive and I was going through like a cove underwater, and there was this massive turtle next to me, and it was either like him or me. And I was like, you know, it was the size of like me. So it was like, who goes through the cove? I'd let the turtle go because I thought that was wise. But we had this like moment of connection. It just made me so happy. Now Serge is on the show because I know you do work, and you continue to do work for so many amazing things on the coast. And I want to talk about all of that you're doing. And Vanessa Warheit as well. You are the chair of Fossil Free California, anti-fossil fuel, getting rid of fossil fuel, and Fossil Free California. And
that video was titled, "How Big Banks Work, Fantastic Friday." Okay, let me read you the title again in case you missed it. How Big Jaguars Work, Fantastic Friday. The Jaguar thing. Because the lies to tell you that this hot dog stand man is not a capitalist engaging in capitalism. And how is that? Well, because he's not as big as Oscar Mayer. This is how these capitalists get to point fingers at big companies. Just to pretend that if it's not big, then I can engage in it while telling you others are evil for doing it. The anti-capitalism crowd reminds me of a few things. One is the old saying, or the old suggestion to never become what you hate. Reminds me of a Bible verse, too. The book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 17, that says, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor." Another thing they remind me of, along with their nefarious climate control agenda, is a changing of the guard, where the replacements are just as bad or maybe even worse than the ones that they seek to unseat.
Behind you stands a symbol of oppression. Blackgate Prison, where 1,000 men have languished under the name of this man, Harvey Dent, who has been held up to you as the shining example of justice.
We're just gonna keep moving you till we can get you in front of the camera.
You have been supplied with a false idol to stop you tearing down this corrupt city. And do you accept this man's resignation? And do you accept the resignation of all of these liars? Of all the corrupt? The corrupt! The rich! The oppressors of generations who have kept you down with myths of opportunity. And we give it back to you. The people. Gotham is yours. None shall interfere. Do as you please. But start by storming Blackgate and freeing the oppressed! Step forward those who would serve. For an army will be raised. The powerful will be ripped from their decadent nests. and cast out into the cold world that we know and endure. Courts will be convened. Spoils will be enjoyed. Blood will be shed. The police will survive as they learn to serve true justice. This great city, it will endure. Gotham will survive.